This is the Leader Lift podcast, taking your leadership from one peak to the next. This podcast is for you, the leader, no matter what stage your leadership is at.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Leader Lift podcast. I'm Mike Kai, your host. Join me as I drop leadership tips and have insightful conversations with leaders from around the world. I'm so glad that you joined me today. Take a moment and subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. Now, let's jump into this week's episode and take your leadership to the next peak.
Well, we are just so thankful that you are both here, Pastor Phil and Pastor Chris of C3 Church. And, I just want to say welcome to Hawaii.
Thank you.
And I know that you'll get sunburn and everything else. Just watch out for the jellyfishes in the ocean.
Yeah.
They will bite. They especially love Australians. So just let you know. Mm-hmm. But this morning we're just doing a podcast, and just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you've been pastoring for 40 years, but did you just were you 18? Were you 16 when you started the church? Tell us.
We've been actually pastoring for around 50 years.
50
but we've been
years.
in Sydney for 40.
Oh, okay.
And so before that, we were in Christchurch, New Zealand for the 10 years before that, about 9 years. And we were born again when I was 19 and Chris was 18.
Yeah.
And we got married about 3 weeks after we were born again because we had been living together. So
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
We came out of that hippie lifestyle
Hippie. Mm-hmm.
and truth seeking and met Jesus, and everything just turned around
Wow.
immediately. Yeah.
Immediately.
Born again. Yep.
Yeah, so then we got into reaching out to all sorts of people. We saw about 1,000 people come to Christ in that first year.
Wow.
And they made me a youth leader, and then I became an assistant pastor. And then we felt God was asking us to start a church when I was about 25.
Yeah.
That's young.
So, so we actually probably was younger than that. Might have been 24 because we left for Sydney when I was 27.
Yeah. We came one time, the first time we came in 75 to Sydney. I was pregnant with Daniel, our second child. And but it didn't we were trying to find our place, where we were meant to be. It didn't quite work out, so we came back to Christchurch with our tail between our legs. The city was right, but the timing was wrong.
So it took until 1980. So we felt the call to Sydney in around about 1972, about a year after we were born again. When we finally landed in Sydney, it was a lot of warfare, a lot of difficulty, a lot of challenges, because people then didn't start churches like they do now. Like take a year with interest meetings and get a lot of money to support you. We had no money and very little interest. And so we just started with
house church. Looks like a house church.
Yes.
Yeah.
We started with 13 people in Easter of 1980 in a DY surf life setting.
Wow. How amazing is that? When you think about a lot of people who are listening, a lot of pastors and leaders, they feel a call to start a church. How do you encourage them to fulfill that calling? What would you say to a new church planter?
Well, I think it's something that really has to be from heaven. And I think the idea that I'm going to go out and start a church is not a good idea.
That's right.
In fact, when people do, people say to me, I believe God's going to make me an apostle. I believe that he wants me to start a church and a movement. My answer is you should get on your knees and beg God to take that off.
Yes.
Because I think you're better to do it out of obedience than out of an ambition to go and start something, because it may look easier than it actually is.
Especially if they've seen what church looks like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you've started a church and you start to train up people, and then they decide to go their own way, etc., that makes for some very challenging times.
Yeah.
And you can't own people and you can't control them.
It's like our kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, I guess we learned from our own experience that people who say, we have feel a burden or a call to this city or this place, I think that's why really C3 Global was set up to help couples or individuals realize that the call and fulfilling that call are like they're two different things. Like you get the dream, you get the, conception's fun, but actually the birthing and the raising is a whole different animal.
Oh, yes.
And so we have tried to, we encourage, but then we want to discourage in a positive way that this is what you're going to face. And are you up for it? Are you up for the task? Because it's going to take longer.
Do you still have those conversations till this day?
With young people? Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, most of our other guys would have those conversations, but we would try and keep sober thinking so that people aren't intoxicated by the vision, but they still are able to look at it. And to them, they can think you haven't got faith, but actually we would think of faith as something that is a very real. It's not blind. It's not deaf. It's calculated risk. Jesus says when you go to build something, sit down and figure out, can you pull this off? And when you know you can, you have faith for it. So I would always advise leaders to underproject and overperform.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and to present a vision that's out of reach but not out of sight. So people can see it, but it's going to make them stretch. And that when we promise something, if a pastor overpromises and doesn't deliver,
yes,
and he does that a couple times, after a while people will roll their eyes when he mentions something that they're planning to do. It's better to promise something low and deliver something big.
So good.
And then people go, wow. So, even that philosophy affects a lot of the way we would start churches. So guys say, I'm putting out 500 seats. I say, why would you do that? And they go, because we're believing. I said, no. What you do, you reckon how many people are going to come? Oh, about 100. I'd say put out 80. They go, 80? That's not faith. I say, yes, it is. Put out 80, and you when 100 turn up, you're going to be bringing out seats. And that's what people will say. They'll say, wow, there were so many people there. We had to bring out extra seats. But if you put out 500 and 100 people come,
empty seats.
They'll say, it was just, a lot of empty seats there today. And so you need to have smart thinking that creates faith and sets you up for success as you go. So it's a combination of wisdom and valor. And I think you've got to be smart and you've got to be courageous as well.
And you need mentors. You need someone who's going to really speak truth.
Yes.
And not just go right ahead, build your church.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, there's so many churches that hasn't grown.
Yes.
For many, many years.
Exactly.
So what do you say to them?
Well, it's not so much being a mentor to a person, it's them making you a mentor.
Yeah.
So
Decision.
Teachable.
some people they don't want really to be taught. So you can't say anything. It's no good me. So a poor spirit attitude about being teachable will make the best mentor in the world useless. But a great teachable attitude will actually make a very poor mentor incredible. Because a teachable spirit draws out of another person wisdom.
That's true.
Yeah.
And so I think in our training sessions, we would try and teach all our pastors to be teachable.
Yeah.
So that we are not having to assume the initiative. Because when you assume the initiative to teach a person, they generally are a little resistant. So most of our guys, they would say, talk to me, tell me what I'm doing that needs correction, needs adjustment. And then they're up for it and they're secure.
Yeah.
So when people are secure and they know they're believed in, they're open to getting corrected or being told whatever.
So you have over 500 churches all around the world. How do you sustain your culture through all those churches around the world?
That's a good question.
Yeah, well,
it's always hard.
Originally, it was teaching.
Yeah.
So I have about 27 aspects of culture that I would teach on: honor, generosity, faithfulness, hospitality, and
Worship.
so it
fun.
goes on: worship, faith, fun, a whole range of factors. And so teaching it is good. And when you go to a particular nation, they generally will have one area that is glaringly absent of that culture. They would find serving other people as demeaning, like makes them servile, they think.
Right.
So they don't see it as a wonderful
Culture.
kingdom aspect.
Yeah, just serve others.
Whereas you go to some other places and they're extremely negative about everything. And so they need that faith piece of the culture. That'd be one area, teaching then conferences all the time.
Yeah.
We have 14 major conferences a year at present. I think next year we're going to have 5 super conferences.
Wow.
And so we have where people come together, but it's not so much to teach, it's to see. So we make sure that all the framework and infrastructure
Show and tell.
of those conferences, I mean, the preaching is going to be preaching and teaching, but it's how you are on the edges of all that, the framework. If there's generosity, if there's hospitality, if there's, and that's what people pick up on.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Because
atmosphere.
the atmosphere.
Yeah.
I would say that culture is in the people more than in a handbook.
Yeah.
So people are looking at what you do, what the light shines on, what it doesn't, what we wouldn't have on the stage, what we would.
What you value, what you don't.
Yeah.
Well, what you celebrate, honor, and profile,
Yes.
you'll get more of.
Yeah.
That is so good.
And so you got to make sure that what you're celebrating and what you're profiling and what you're honoring is what you want more of,
Yeah.
and that you're not just doing it because you're playing the fair game. You're saying it's only fair that we give this person a bit of stage time. They've been around so long, but if they're an idiot, you don't want them up there.
No, you don't
Because
want
you
them
don't
on
want
your
more of
platform.
You don't want
No.
them reproduced.
So people are the handbook.
Yeah.
That is so good.
And the other way that culture is, you're looking after it is, it's not coming just from Phil and myself. All our regional areas have one-on-one with husbands and wives and meet in their homes, meet their friends, just get a feel of the couple that are leading. And then from there you can get a pretty idea of how the atmosphere of the church is going to be. It's reflected in the leaders.
It is.
So getting with our leaders, like here we are in Hawaii with our 60-ish,
Wow.
1,000+ church leaders, it'll be to reassess and to celebrate together and have fun together and eat together, pray together, and then have sessions, obviously, of leadership and growth and impartation.
In our own locations, we have a team who go around each location and will sit there and tick off on what parts of the culture are working, what needs attention. And we try to get it off the personality of the leader on the stage and get it into the way everybody is behaving, especially the volunteers, obviously. And so, they'll have a debrief after the service and talk to the lead guy and say, look, you got to give this attention, that attention.
So even your decision and who you send out as pastors, as your, what do you call them, location pastors? They have to represent your heart, represent your culture, and that makes so much sense because you do reproduce what you put out there. Yeah. I remember, we love Pastor Jurgen and Pastor Leanne Matisius, and that's how they've exposed us to the C3 churches.
Yes. Yeah.
And I learned a lot just by watching them.
Right.
And Leanne had taught me something, and I've been carrying it. And she talked about how sowing into something that you desire in you.
Yes.
And this is what she's learned from both of you.
Right.
And ever since then, I realized, well, I want this, I want that. Not materially.
No,
it's more the
spiritual.
the spiritual, the prophetic, the wisdom. And I said, well, God shows me people, and when we sow, I'm like, I'm going to sow personally, not just because I had to.
Yeah.
And I really have been reaping the rewards.
Totally.
So talk about that. Talk about teaching that sowing and reaping.
There's been a variety of seasons in our church over the years that have been, I'd have to say in some areas anyway, they seem to have been groundbreaking, pioneering, apostolic, if you like, which that word, when Paul is talking about the apostles, it says first apostles, and that word first means like breakthrough, like proton, an explosive thing that paves the way. And so one of those seasons in our church, probably about 83, 84, we spent a lot of time talking about sowing and reaping and about prospering. It was in the days when that word was still not quite a wrong word to use. Most people would use the word blessed or doing well or that kind of thing. But in those days, to prosper was a good thing. A nation should prosper and a family should prosper. So we taught that from every angle. And we found that it brought in many, many people who were doing well in life, were wealthy, but felt uncomfortable in church because there was this vibe about wealth isn't that good. It's not really good.
Not for the Christians.
If they had a Porsche at home and a Ford, they'd drive the Ford to church because they didn't want to be seen to having a Porsche parked in church. And so I was teaching, hey, if anybody turns up here in a Rolls Royce or a Porsche, you reach out your hand and congratulate them. They must have worked hard for that.
Yes.
And tell them they deserve it. Tell them they're blessed. And so I created an environment, or worked on creating an environment, which gave permission for people to do really well, to be champions.
Yes.
Not only in money, but in politics, in entertainment,
And influence.
in education. So the best of the best started to feel like, wow, we're celebrated.
We're allowed.
We're celebrated. We're not frowned on.
Yes.
Which is, how stupid can we be
I
as
know.
Christians?
Isn't that so?
Yeah.
It's like I should just live this poor life.
Yeah. And then frown on anybody who does well. What a ridiculous thing that is.
Like
and
they must have done something
wrong.
like undercover to prosper. Was that in Australia back then? Even out in the culture, the secular world, there was a sort of a pull down the tall poppy thing. And I really know that Phil saw that. Look, we've got to turn this around. We actually want to honor people who are doing well and who've worked hard, because pretty much wealthy people
work hard,
and long. And so, Phil was amazing in that way and developed the whole Pathfinders, the business breakfasts, and honouring those who are doing well in society and welcoming men into the culture of the church, which was fitting. So,
what are Pathfinders?
Pathfinders are business people that are in the marketplace that we wanted to celebrate as men and women of God who were serving the Lord and doing a wonderful thing out there in the marketplace that pastors couldn't do. So I was like a chaplain to the marketplace in some ways, and I would speak a little message at a breakfast, and then we'd have a guest speaker in, sometimes a non-Christian, but just somebody who could help them in their business world. And so we wanted to foster, train, and nurture young business guys into becoming hugely successful. And I got one guy there that I can think of right now who's been the top real estate salesperson in Australia for the last 12 years. Every year gets this award. And I remember when he came to Christ in 1984, just as a young guy. I know lawyers who were in university when they came to Christ in our church, and now they are top lawyers in the city of Sydney. And then we've had one guy who was at university, and he became one of the 5 most influential people in Australia.
Wow.
He was the head of the ABC television, and he was also the chief editor of a major newspaper. So, and that's just some of them that I can think right off the top of my head, changing the culture of Christians to think of themselves as being leaders in the community, not just being Christians in the marketplace, but actually being the leaders. So now we have a prime minister who's a Pentecostal, who we've worked with at various times over the years. And we want to promote the idea that we are the light of the world.
Yeah.
We're meant to be the leaders, and somewhere down the line, we all retreated, thinking that was more holy, but it's not. It's Jesus says, "Occupy till I come."
Yeah.
And so we need to. And the way that you occupy is that the world has changed from the top down, never the bottom up, and it's changed from powerful leadership, and you become a leader because you win, because you have succeeded in life. And people will surrender the direction of their life to a person who slays their Goliath. You know, they'll make him the king.
It's so good because we just started this thing called Influencer Network. Really basically from this model of Pathfinders.
Right.
And it's literally fresh. It's still new. And we just had our first Influencers Network and we had over 220 people.
Fantastic.
And in that audience was literally 60% non-Christians.
Yeah.
And they actually did ask, is this a Christian thing? Because if it is, I don't want to come.
Yeah.
And we purposely made it where it was not a church event.
Yes.
There was no Christianity, like there's no Christian words being said. The only thing we did was pray in Jesus' name, and that's it. And we invited CEOs just to come and have a meal with us and to just see what we're trying to do. And they loved it.
Yeah.
In fact, there was this one guy that keeps calling Mike, and he's swearing in his text, and this and this, and that, and we're just loving it. We're like, this is amazing because it does open doors. It opens doors to so many people's heart. That's the only way we can enter, I believe, into their heart to see that we're real. We're not this people. Yeah.
Well, they're leaders and they'll be lonely and discouraged and facing challenges, and oftentimes they feel like they can't go anywhere. There's nobody to talk to.
That's right.
But you provide them with that kind of environment.
And that's what
where they feel safe. Like we've found that no person that I've ever met in that moment when you say, is there anything in your life that we can pray for?
And who's going to say no?
Nobody ever refuses. And underneath every successful person, they might have a son or a daughter who's having difficulties or even within their own marriage, or and they need a confidant. They need someone who they can trust. And, well, that's going to be you and Mike. Great shepherds.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And it is, it's really amazing to see world changers right in front of me.
Right.
And to be able to talk with you both and to get to know you both. It's really been our honor to have you with us.
Well, thank you for having us, Mike and Lisa. And we love you guys. You're doing an incredible work.
Thank you.
Amazing work for God.
Well,
you're inspiring.
I'm inspiring. It fits our name, but thank you so much.
God bless you.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us on this week's Leader Lift podcast. Now don't forget to hit subscribe to receive the latest episodes. And I would love for you to follow me on Instagram at Mike Kai and let me know what you got out of this week's podcast. I'll see you next week on the next Leader Lift podcast, where we're helping to take your leadership from one peak to the next. Aloha.